Poker's legendary champions, next generation stars, and tireless ambassadors of the game, sharing their wisdom and guiding your journey to high achievement on the green felt. This is Tactical Tuesday on Chasing Poker Greatness with your hosts, Brad Wilson and Jon Chai.
Welcome, my friend, to another episode of the Chasing Poker Greatness podcast. That these days, kind of the Tactical Tuesday podcast. If I could be honest, it seems as if the Tuesdays only show of the week. So, welcome to the Tactical Tuesday podcast on the CPG Podcast Network that only has one show, Tactical Tuesday. I'm Coach Brad Wilson, and I'm joined by my co-host, Jonathan. How are we doing, sir?
Doing good. We got one of my favorite. I think this will be one of my favorite episodes of Tactical Tuesday because it's about flush draws.
You love flush draws.
I think a little bit too much, as you guys will soon see.
Yeah. It's a real thing. I don't know if we need like flush draws anonymous or some type of program, but John legitimately, he loves his flush draws. His policy with flush draws, by the way, is that just never play them in a way where you have to fold at any point. Never. That's the.
I'm seeing the river no matter what. Double turn board on the turn. I'm seeing the river.
I might make this flush. Like, you want to ruin John's month? Just make him fold a flush draw. At some point in the hand, he's like, Charlie Brown, just head down, distraught, walking away from the table. You don't have to worry about playing against John anymore if you make him fold a flush draw. With that said, I guess you're going to flop a flush draw here with this ace-8 of spades. You can go ahead and break down the action for the listener.
How funny would it be if it was like a one spade flop? So I flop a flush draw.
3 flush draw.
We had an open from middle position, $25 playing 5-10. I'm in the big blind with ace-8 of spades. I call reg in middle position, queen 9-4 2 spades. So we flop a real flush draw. Reg starts out with a 1/3 c-bet.
You see how judgy he is about backdoor flush draws? This is a real flush draw, not like one of those.
Oh no, they're all real. I think they're all real. Trust me, I am the biggest advocate for backdoor flush draws you'll find.
Oh, okay. Way to set me straight. So you flopped the nut flush draw, queen 9-4, queen 9 of spades. 100 bigs deep. You started. Reg starts out by betting a third-ish. Looks less than a third.
Yeah, small size. I don't know. I mean, you could have every single size in your c-bet strategy on this board. I think queen 9-4 two-tone. Wouldn't be shocked to see someone have a third, a big size, and a checking range. Wouldn't be surprised to see someone bet a third with their range. Wouldn't be surprised to see someone not even have a 1/3 c-bet size and only be playing big bet check. So can't really read too much into this c-bet size, other than it's on the smaller side and probably going to have more check raises, just with all parts of my range facing smaller c-bets. And nut flush draw, overcard, going to make it in there.
Definitely going to make it in there, right? How could nut flush draw with overcard not make it in there?
Yeah, I had all those qualifiers like nut flush draw with overcard, but really it doesn't matter whether it's nut or overcard or 2 unders or.
You have flush draw with backdoor straight possibilities. Going to raise that one too.
Oh yeah, we didn't even mention that.
I don't think there's like any hand that you have that doesn't have some kind of backdoor straight possibility on queen 9-4 with the queen 9 of spades. So you raise, villain calls. You check raise to 80. They see bet 16. Anything about the size here looks fairly normal to me.
Yeah, looks pretty standard. I actually like plug this hand into a solver just to see like what the exact preferred sizes were, and this was one of the options, but the larger check raise size was actually preferred. So this is about like a 75% pot check raise, and the sim that I looked at actually wanted a larger check raise on this board and a check raise to like 100% pot, which is a little bit bigger, but I don't think it's going to have like a. I don't know,
how'd you feel when the solver told you could put more money in with your nut flush draw?
Oh, I was like,
Yes.
I didn't know that. Like, thanks for telling me. Like,
Yes.
did you do 150% range option by any chance? Like,
Did you try a jam? I mean,
yeah,
I don't
did
know.
you-
Let's see. Stick.
Yeah.
Turn is a 7. 214 in the pot. They've got 890 behind. We didn't really talk about range construction on the flop as far as like check raising versus small bet. I think that, when you are check raising more of these hands like flush draws or open enders, even some like backdoor flush draws with like a 3 straight or gut shot, like 10-8 of diamonds or something like that. I think that's hands totally fine to check raise. One of the considerations is that when you check raise the flop, if you don't check raise your top pairs, then you run out of having like a robust value range, right? Like you don't have queens, you have queen 9 suited, probably don't even have 9s. You 3-bet that pre a fair amount. You have
Definitely don't have
4s.
9-4.
You don't have 9-4. You don't have queen 4. So like essentially, you're repping like 4s and queen 9 suited, which is 6 combos. Whereas if you have like all the jack 10s, backdoor flush draws, backdoor straight draws, like gut shots with backdoor flush draws, those type of hands, then like, yeah, you just can very quickly realize that you just don't have enough equity in your range when you're check raising. And one way to like add equity to your range would be to check raise hands like king queen, maybe even like queen jack, those type of hands on the flop, and then have like build that into your check raise check strat on the turn. Because if you don't have those hands in your check raise check strat, well, when you check raise and then you check the turn, it makes your life incredibly difficult out of position and makes their life incredibly easy out of when they're in position.
Yeah. I used to run into that problem here where like the only hands that I would check raise check would be draws that I check raised on the flop that turned a pair. And so yeah, I totally sympathize with like the problems that come up with range construction when you're only check raising draws and top 2 pair and sets. And yeah, I totally agree, especially facing the small size. I think that you should have check raises with strong top pairs.
Yeah. With that said, now there's 214 in the pot. Villain has 890 behind, and you're kind of at another interesting node here to bet or check the turn. I guess this node is very easy for you. just going to be betting the turn, absolute frequency.
Likely just setting up for stacks or like threatening stacks on the river. I don't know if that's like I don't know if that's necessary. Like, could I just get away with like 3/4 here or a smaller size, and not have to like pot it or whatever it looks like I'll have to do to get stacks in? I'm generally just gonna like kind of do the stack getting in posture thing on the turn and
see what
I don't
happens.
know if that garners me any extra fold equity, but I'm doing it hoping that it does.
I would be very nervous about that line because you do open the door for villain to just like rip aces and kings and like a hand like king queen or queen jack, right? I think would be a rippable hand here on the turn facing the big bet. Like I would actually just check this hand. I think that I would reserve my bets on the turn for my worse flush draws. Not ace high. I think like with the nut flush draw, you do have like a ton of equity against like jack 10.
We can still have the best hand basically.
All their like worst flush draws. So like I would just check this one and then kind of play accordingly. Maybe just
what
need to check range.
Check, though, when they
So
like you check and say, I think one of the most common things that's going to happen is they stab a third on the turn.
Maybe just check range.
Yeah, and then I just like, so versus the third, what do you do with this hand?
I would call.
And then versus like a big turn stab,
I would call.
3/4.
I have pretty much. I'm just going to check call essentially.
Okay. The one like downside to that I'm worried about is that we get bluffed in that spot. Whereas, if we kind of take my line, we're we're hopefully never losing to King Jack and Jack 10. And
Yeah. So just jam the
hanging.
flop. You never get bluffed if you just stick it all in on the flop, right? Like I think I forgot when I was given the rules of poker that not getting bluffed was like the primary consideration before I make any decision. But
That's a negative outcome that comes from checking this hand, is that we will now lose to worse hands
maybe.
almost always.
How? Like they could check back with Jack 10 and then say the river pairs the board. Like you can check call. I mean,
Oh, I see.
you don't.
So you're like thinking about like situations where you bluff catch river with
Yeah,
ace high.
like plus, like I mean, we have to like brick everything on the river too, which I mean, I guess it happens like 75% of the time when the turn goes check check. But like if you check range, like you could check jam this hand. Like you could check jam your sets. You could probably check jam king queen if you check raise the flop and check and they bet like half on the turn.
Mhm.
Or check raise anyway. Maybe jam is like overdoing it, but like just give them the double check raise. I think that's
double check
like
raise.
totally reasonable for this spot. Like the problem for me is like you're betting the turn at an absolute frequency after check raising the flop. The reason I know that is because of what you're saying. What do I do when I check? You don't know what you do, which means you're not checking this spot.
Uh-huh.
And like check raising this board and then betting the turn at an absolute frequency when like you've got such limited value to pull from just seems like a recipe to get rocked.
So check raise, check range. Okay. Man, that's like, I mean, I feel like this is just like, this must be them. Like if that's like actually the what I should be doing, then this is like a pretty frequently occurring spot that I've been messing up by just always barreling the turn after check raising the flop. That doesn't feel good.
I mean, there are a lot of like little things that need to happen in order to check raise check. Like the main one being that you have just very limited amount of very strong hands to pull from, which just inherently makes your range full of hands like this.
Yeah.
And so like that's a great situation for villain.
Yeah. Just
like,
easy for, you know, smart, capable regs to just take a pair, ace high or whatever, and just bluff catch the spot and realize that I'm probably way over check raising and way over barreling on.
I mean, or just jam the turn with like a queen. Yeah. Like you bet pot, they just jam. Like, good luck. Like good luck beating them when they take that line. Like blocking queen 9. I accidentally muted myself for a second. Yeah, good luck turning a profit.
In my defense, so this is just like my go-to line for this strategy. I don't get jammed on the turn, and like that's, you know, it's sort of a little like, I get what you mean by like, yeah, like if that's how like my range is comprised, then like it makes a lot of sense to jam the turn and just like deny a lot of my equity, or deny a lot of equity from my range.
You're also going to overfold like at an incredible level.
Yeah, facing the jam.
Yeah,
I just don't face it though.
Yeah,
which is like, and I, you know, it's definitely a threat. But I feel like if I did get jammed on the turn, you know, even, you know, at like a relatively reasonable frequency, not even if it was just like happening like all the time, it's something that I would definitely be like, okay, like I need to change how I play this spot.
Yeah. Well,
maybe
you would know.
Happens and I'm not, you know, I'm not like picking up on it. It happens like sometimes, and I'm just.
Well, it's gonna happen now. No, you would know. If you take this line at a high frequency and villains aren't responding in this way, like I personally am hesitant to just like deploy a strat that has like
holes in it.
It's like, oh, this is like really like, if I actually just think about this situation, like I have a pretty hard counter that just wrecks your life. Right. So anyway, with all that said, like
I actually think the biggest takeaway for me from this conversation is that I should be jamming the turn in position more, because like that's something I don't do either, which is probably why I don't see it. like
Mm.
about to happen or like looming, like when I bet
Yeah.
ace 8, because I just call all my bluff catchers and call the river, but like I'm just totally seeing like all the merits of, you know, people likely just not having enough value in their check raise barrel turn line on brick turns to make me not want to jam the turn. So like, yeah, I'm going to change maybe think about changing my out of position strategy, but I'm definitely going to change my IP strategy after getting check raised on the flop to just at least consider jamming more when I face a big turn barrel.
Yeah. Very nice. Well, let's see what happens on the turn. I assume you're just going to bet. You bet pot, they call. Everything bricks on the river. There's 636 in the pot. They've got 679. You
like a
have
reasonable give up candidate.
I mean, let's see. So you have infinite bluffs, very little value. That seems like it would make it a decent give up candidate.
2 cards that we would really like our opponent to have.
Yeah, we block the hands that like we would like villain to have so they can fold more. So cool. Like, yeah, this seems like you're just, you know, wandering. You're like in World War I, just wandering across no man's land in broad daylight, waving your arms like, "Hey guys,
I hope I make it.
I'm gonna make it. Like, be friends. Don't hurt me." Yeah, this seems like a clear give up spot. Like, I just
want to tie this back to or like this spot back to like one of the suggestions that we got in the village from longtime villager who had like a tactical Tuesday request about just like having bluff situations where like you do take an aggressive action with a bluff or a semi bluff and then find a spot later down the line to check or give up, whether it be on the turn or the river. And I think this is just like one of the most I don't know, just like one of the most commonly occurring situations. I know this isn't technically like a low equity bluff on the flop. It's not like a, gut shot or double backdoor.
It's low equity on the river.
Huh?
It's low equity on the river. It's very low equity on the river.
For sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, so like just like again, like all the properties of this hand, like, you know, we have infinite bluffs on this run out. We have again 2 cards that we would really hope our opponent would have on the river and hope that we're folding out lots of bricks, ace high flush draws or stuff like that. So a lot of reasons not to jam here, and just like breaking the front door flush draw after playing it really aggressively, I think is a reasonable spot to just give up on the river. And so which, all that said, I'm guessing you just pile it in. No. Oh, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. He piled it in. For the podcast listener, he stuck all the money in. Villain called, had aces, and said, "Thank you for the tasty snack there, sir. Yep. I appreciate it." Okay. Well, hand number 1, days without incidences, hands without incidences back to 0. Stick around after the break. Let's see if we can make it 1 hand without incident before next week. Stick around.
Are you a lone wolf searching for the ultimate pack? The CPG Wolf program is a close-knit brotherhood hell-bent on one thing only: chasing poker greatness. Powered by bleeding-edge wolf strats and led by Coach Brad and his lieutenants, CPG Wolves are systematically prepared for almost any spot they'll encounter on the green felt. If you want to plug into an elite team and have a step-by-step game plan to realize your full poker potential, you can apply at cpgwolves.com. Space is limited, and the pack is only as strong as its weakest member. So only the hungriest, grittiest, and most driven will be accepted into the program. Applications are open at cpgwolves.com.
All right, we're back at 0, hands without incident. Let's see if John can redeem himself in the back half of today's Tactical Tuesday. To start the action off, he's playing 1K and L. The button opens to 2.5 bigs. About 130 big blinds effective. John's in the big blind with ace-4 of diamonds. I imagine that he's just going to call. I was actually going to say you could 3-bet here, like very easily. But you defend the big blind with ace-4 of diamonds. Flop is 8-8 deuce with the 8 deuce of diamonds. So pretty decent flop for you with nut flush draw. You check, villain bets a quarter. Yeah, a quarter-ish, 30%-ish.
It's already a lot of ways we could go with this hand.
Sure.
Like, I could see just check calling with your nut flush draws and treating ace high like a bluff catcher on a paired flop where, you know, ace high is gonna I think perform much better as a bluff catcher than it does on non-paired boards, and check raise just our worse flushes that don't have as much showdown value, or any showdown value, like a, you know, 6-4 of diamonds type hand maybe. The flip side is when we do check raise our nut flush draws here, one of the nice things that happen is we can get called by worse flush draws and either cooler them or just, you know, end up somehow playing a much larger pot flush draw versus flush draw. We can just get folds now. Doubtful that we get folds from any better hands, but still, you know, just folding out people's equity is generally positive. So
welcome to Tactical Tuesday, where we can do anything and anything is okay. Anything and everything is okay, except for folding. Folding is the the not okay option. But yeah, I agree. Like, you can check raise, you can call. I'm pretty relatively indifferent.
Yeah. We do
generally, I just call with this category of hand and check raise the other ones.
Yeah.
But, you know, you got your flush draw fetish, so you go ahead and put in the check raise to $78 on the flop. Villain calls. So now the pot is 211.78, and the turn is a 6 of diamonds. So Fetish realized you have a flush now. This is the dream, right? Turn is 6 of diamonds. Board is 8-8-6 deuce, 3 diamonds. John has 1200. Pot is 200. Now what?
Sizing options on the turn. I think one really common thing to do when a front door draw comes in after check raising the flop is to size down. On the turn. It's just basically kind of just recognizing that, like, once diamonds come in, we don't have very many bluffs anymore on the turn. Our bluffs are just going to be like, you know, 7-9 of spades, like those types of hands that, you know, that were like a 3 straight 3 flush on the flop. Now most of my range is just going to be 8x flushes, and then again, like those small 3 straight 3 flushes. So just going to size down on the turn to kind of incentivize the player on the button to have like a wider calling range, put hands like, you know, black nines into a tougher spot. Whereas I think if I bet big here, hands like over pairs without a diamond can, you know, at least start thinking about folding. Even just like hands like overcards, I think that could easily call a check raise on the flop. Like a hand like, you know, ace queen of spades or something like that is I think going to have a much more difficult time facing 70 on the turn, or a third on the turn, $70 than it would, you know, facing a large bet. So I think I am kind of like attacking the range that I want to attack with the small size, and the big size they just start folding that range.
Okay. Well, there you go. You bet 68 into 211. I don't really have much to say. I think, you know, you could use a big size, but whatever. Small size is like in there too. Villain calls, river's a 10. So deuce 8-8-6 10. Now you have all your 3 straight 3 flush on the flop are now straights or top pair by the river. So
this is where I really wasn't sure what to do now that I just have nothing that's like total air anymore on the river. The worst hands I have now are probably like 10, you know, 10-7 of spade, like some sort of 10x, maybe some sort of 6x. Although I don't know, I don't think I'd bet the 6x on the turn, so it's probably like some sort of 10x. Just too many options, I think.
Yeah. This is very tricky. I'm unsure. I'm in the tank here with this.
All right, walk me through the things you're thinking about. Besides,
So many things. So like, what does villain do if they have a flush? If I bet a third, like, will they ever raise with a flush? Right? Where do my natural bluffs come from? How many boats do I have? Like, if I bet small, like, can villain bluff? Do they have any, like, and what sort of hands would they be able to bluff with? Right? Like, what sort of, like 6-7 of spades or something? Pocket pairs, I guess, fit the bill. Like
sevens with a diamond.
sevens with a diamond or something like that. Maybe those hands would be needed to bluff. What does my 8x do here? Like if I check raise 8x and then like flush completer, like how does that part of my range play the rest of this hand? It's another like question that I think matters, and I'm unsure. The fact that you bet a third on the turn, like you're kind of going linear, right? Like on the turn and sizing down. So like, does it make sense to like size up here on the river? Should you check? What happens if you check the river? Like, does villains flushes bet, and then will they call a check jam, or do you only get called by boats? My suspicion is that if you check jam and get called, you're probably totally screwed. So like, you probably don't want to play for 2 bets, which brings me back to my original thought of like, how many boats do we have to defend with here, like compared to villain? So those
They
are
definitely
sort of
have way more boats than we do, because we don't have like offsuit 10-8. I don't know if the button sometimes opens a hand like that.
Yeah, they've got 10s. We 3-bet 10s.
Yeah.
They can easily call the flop with 6s. We probably don't check raise 6s at like a super high frequency. So yeah, like they've got more boats than us. I mean, after I kind of go through all that, like I'm feeling as if check might be the way. Just check and let their flushes value bet. Yeah. Anyway, I'm really
Check call.
depends on the size. But probably because I can't figure out where my bluffs come from if I check raise. I guess the bluffs would come from like ace jack off with the ace of diamonds, some sort of like check raise with a backdoor flush draw, which I think, by the way, you should do on the flop. By the way, those are hand categories that we kind of glossed over, but like, ace 5 off or whatever with the ace of diamonds, I think is like has to be in your check raise range, because like that's gonna power your bluffs down the line here.
Oh yeah,
like,
that would make it so that I actually have a pretty decent bluffing range here on the river.
Yeah. As it is, and as humans tend to play, I don't think that they do that often enough. So like, I don't know,
Okay,
John.
so
I would
first
just check.
option
I would
here-
check the river, like, because okay. So first of all, like, I don't know if their overpairs call a bet anyway, like a big bet.
But their 8x does.
Their 8x does. Their 8x might value bet themselves if we check. Like ace 8 will value bet. King 8 will value bet.
Yeah.
Like they need to dominate
some of our eights.
trips, our potential trips, maybe.
Yep.
But I mean, we're just at such, like they just have more boats than us, and like I don't know. I would just check the river and call versus like most bets, I think.
Okay. So the first option was like, you're the one that you're going with is check call. The first option you were considering was small bet.
Yeah.
And then
small bet.
Fold to raise.
Well, I mean, I consider small bet. I consider big bet. I consider check. Those are the 3 considerations.
What's the reason you didn't like big bet? Like a 3/4?
Because I'm not entirely sure where our bluffs come from. I don't know if aces or kings just calls 3/4.
But
like
other flushes and 8x do, don't they?
True, they do. If you check, the flushes will definitely bet.
Yeah.
For value. Like there's no doubt about flushes.
Right.
8x gets more complicated because flushes beat trips,
Yeah.
which so
Yeah. They probably don't bet all of their 8x when we check, but they probably bet all of their flushes.
yeah. They probably call with all their 8x, but they probably fold their overpairs.
Mhm.
And they have more they just have more boats in their range. Like yeah. I would just if like the IP player is like actually thinking about it, I think like king should just be a fold on the river, like facing the big bet.
Sure.
Maybe they call the small bet just because it's a small bet, but
Yeah.
like first the big bet, they should definitely fold. I think in general.
Okay.
And I just don't like giving people like a point of leverage where they have so many more boats than us and like they can just do whatever they want. Like I hate giving people that option.
Yeah. I think that's what I ended up doing on the river. I thought I'd just go for the big bet, try to get called by the flushes and the trips, and like I was okay with the overpairs folding. The main concern was what you brought up, was just like, oh, they have so many more boats than we do. Like, what if they just kind of start going crazy and just start turning trip eights into a bluff, like on the river, thinking that like my range here is like flush. It's just like a lot of flushes and maybe some trips themselves. Like that would be terrible. I don't know if they actually do that with like trips, or maybe they pick other categories of hands, maybe like a hands with 9-10, like some sort of something like that.
Hard to really
Anyways,
have.
I basically I was scared of like them, having the same realization that we did and being like, oh wow, I have so many more boats here. I can just start, jamming here, facing the big bet with huge chunks of my range.
Yeah, that's not a great realization. Like we're banking on them not having that realization versus the small bet or the big bet, honestly.
Right.
They jam. So final board, 8-8 deuce was the flop, turn 6 of diamonds, river 10 of clubs. John bet small and then bet big. Check raise, small bet, big bet. Villain rips. So John's getting exactly 2-1. Needs to win 33% of the time. You beat value, maybe.
Do we?
I don't know.
Like
King 3 of diamonds? Like you don't think King 3 of diamonds is going to raise?
Sorry, what were you saying?
You don't think King 3 of diamonds jams
That's
facing
what I
a
was
bet?
worried about. It's like, it's so funny because I was like scared of getting jammed on after I big bet, and then get jammed on, and my first thought is like, like maybe you would do that with like some worse flushes, thinking that I would just jam the nut flush here or do something else with the nut
Well,
flush.
you three bet with ace king, ace queen, and ace jack suited at least, right? Pre
ace 10,
ace 10 suited, ace 5 suited.
Yeah.
So like you actually, if they have the king high flush, you have like ace 9, ace 7, ace 3, ace 4. That's 4 combos. 3 combos of deuces.
But
I mean,
another question that he has to ask himself, and that I was thinking about, is like, when he jams a king high flush, does he expect me to call with a worse hand?
Yeah. That is a better question, I think. King high flush, probably. You can call it the queen high flush. I mean,
dude, I'm like scared with the nut flush here.
Yeah, you should be.
So how can you think that? I would not expect someone to call with a king high or queen high flush. I'd be a little surprised if I jammed here and they did.
Yeah.
And like that's what I was saying. Like, if I feel terrible here with the nut flush, do you think a good reg, or
how do you feel with deuces?
A 1K reg is the same. Deuces and the nut flush are like the same thing, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit better to have deuces because you have a little bit of hope that he jams the nut flush.
Yeah. That's your hope with deuces.
Yeah.
Well, whatever. I don't know. I would have checked the river. Here we are. You've got to like call. I mean, I would imagine that like theoretically speaking, you're probably supposed to call the nut flush, like, because it's really difficult for you to fold the nut flush and like be able to defend at any close to reasonable frequency facing jam. But
yeah, that's what I was worried about too. It's just like, I again, like, I think you're right that this is, if I threw this into a solver, it'd just be like a I don't know if it would play the hand this way, but if it gets to the river in this way, then this would certainly just be like a bet call, maybe even just like a jam on the river or something like that, like where you don't get to not put all the money in.
Yeah. And maybe that should be like a bigger consideration when you bet a third on the turn, right? If you just bet bigger on the turn, then you can jam the river.
Yeah.
There's like 600 in the pot, and you've got, 600 in the pot, and you're going to have like 1,000. So it's like 1.5x rip.
Yeah. I think that was going to be my next question, was like, should we trace this back to my turn size, and should I be using a different size on the turn and just target their flushes and their 8x, right? Which is like, they're going to have a decent number of both categories of hands once they call it check raise on the flop. So it's not like terrible to just go big on the turn and, maybe have them fold out their over pairs or some of their more marginal type hands, but you just get in tons of money versus their flushes and their 8x, and you get a pretty comfortable jam on the river, which makes the hand, the rest of the hand, play out much more smoothly. Because if we think about the small bet on the turn, I'm probably having this feeling on a lot of rivers, right? Like this, I don't know what to do, like what size to use. Do I bet fold? Do I check?
Sure.
So yeah, I do think that
I'm so afraid of these players being able to find jams, like in a spot where they realize they have like the nut advantage. And you're like, come on, bro, like you really like betting here when like I've got so many more boats than you,
right?
And like I can just exert max pressure on the nut flush. Like that is my biggest fear when I'm like considering folding on the river or betting the river even. I'm like, dude, if they're smart enough to because I mean, I think that if we think about the strat, like it's a little bit disrespectful to them to size up when they have like all the boats and all the leverage. Like you're banking on them not recognizing that. I hate banking on my opponent not recognizing something, because like then when they jam, my first thought is always, did they recognize it? Like, did they recognize it? Or like, like, are they just jamming like some kind of like overpair that they're turning into a bluff? You know,
it just forces you to play like a guessing game where you're like
having an 8. You can have an 8 and turn an 8 into a bluff and be like, good luck calling me with your 3 combos of deuces and infinite flushes. Like, I think jamming an 8 is like super cool. Like just turning an 8 into a bluff and being like, whatever, bro. Like, and I actually think that like in today's day and age, like villains are capable of finding that, which makes it
totally agree. Yeah. 8 I'd be like a little bit more impressed with, but like really I could totally see people doing it with like 7s with a diamond, 9s with a diamond, just those sorts of 5s, 4s. Like I guess they can't have 4s, but 5s and 3s. Like, so yeah, I mean that's really why I wanted to talk about this river spot. Is like I was worried about that. I was worried that they don't jam enough worse value, like, which are two kind of conflicting thoughts, right? It's like, well, like they might jam, like they might have like too many bluffs here, or like lots and lots of bluffs here, which feels strange when they're not jamming, like king 3 of diamonds, or if I'm like really unsure that they jam like the king eye flush or the queen eye flush on the river. Which like, I don't know, does that like ever make you want to go back to like bet call?
I would just call the river. Just doing the math off the top of my head, I would bet call the river. I think they've got like 10 combos of boats and they need like 6 bluff combos or something, and like all they have to do is turn like some sort of hand at an absolute frequency into a bluff to be over bluffing.
Yeah, pocket 7s and 6 combos. Like,
yeah, that's all you need. Like if they have 7s, you're home.
Yeah.
Like, so I wouldn't fold here because it's so easy for them to over bluff. But I wouldn't like getting myself into this situation in the first place.
Yeah. So just to like recap what I should do in this spot next time, I think it's just bet bigger on the turn and jam the river.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah. He folded the nut flush. Yeah. Look at him. He's got his fetish for flush draws, but flushes. He's like, need boat plus.
All about the chase.
It's all about the chase. Woo! They have the boat. The A10-0. You did it.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, he's gonna jam this hand, but like, so what? Like, we didn't.
Yeah.
The thing is, I didn't want to learn anything from this hand because learning from this hand would mean that I got bluffed. And
Yeah. Well, I think that getting bluffed would actually be the preferable result for you, because
no, I
then-
learned without getting bluffed, which is okay.
Well, yeah. See, this is the value, by the way, of having a coach. For the listener, you're hearing it in real time. Like, we learned from this hand, and you didn't get bluffed, which I think is like quite important. You don't have to pay the price to learn from these type of situations. And
just to like kind of get into like the value of coaching again is just like I brought in this hand thinking that we'd spend a ton of time talking about the river, and like that's where I would like tinker with my strategy, but really it just it's like the spot that I should fix is the turn, which is like wasn't really even in the forefront of my mind when I was thinking about questions for this hand.
Yeah, great segue there as we close down the show. Live cash pre-flop bootcamp. There are things that you are doing when you're telling your friends hand histories after you play live poker that like you should be thinking about what you did on the Genesis in the first node in the game tree. Like, I guarantee you that if you give 10 hand histories to somebody, like, you will have made many mistakes pre-flop within those hand histories. So learning what is appropriate, what is inappropriate, what the strat should be, just pays for itself before the mistakes happen. I mean, and that's just the reality of it. So chasingpokergreatness.com, live cash pre-flop bootcamp. Highly recommend that you gobble up that course. And with that said, good stuff today, John. As always, that's all I got.
See you next week.
See you next week.
Thanks for listening to Chasing Poker Greatness. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or on your favorite podcast app. Go to chasingpokergreatness.com to get the newsletter, join the Greatness Village community, book a coaching session, or dive into the latest data-driven poker courses. Follow the show on Twitter @CPG Podcast.